Hello everyone, this is me again, Teacher Or, and welcome back to my channel. Panibagong araw at panibagong kaalaman naman sa matematika. Okay, for this video, I am going to discuss to you the domain and range of an inverse functions. Okay, so we have two objectives for this video. First, we are going to find the inverse function of a rational function. And second, we are going to find the domain and range of an inverse function. Take note, in the previous video, I was discussing the domain and range of a rational function. And this time is all about the domain and range of an inverse function. Take note again, that the rational function is different from inverse function. Okay, let me emphasize, this video is all about the domain and range of an inverse function and not the rational function. Before that, let us differentiate what is a rational function and an inverse function. Anong pinagkaiba ng dalawa? Okay, so rational function, let's take a look at a picture. A rational function is denoted by f of x. Meaning, wala siyang exponent na negative 1. If you can see an equation having an f of x without the negative 1 exponent, that signifies a rational function. On the other hand, an inverse function is denoted by f with an exponent of negative 1. So kapag makakita ka ng isang equation na may f to the power of negative 1, ibig sabihin niyan, you are now in an inverse function. Again, take a look at the difference of an inverse function and a rational function. A rational function is denoted by f of x, while an inverse function is denoted by f to the power of negative 1. So let's start. Okay. So, the first thing to do is we have to convert the rational equation into an inverse function or inverse equation. Again, dapat i-convert natin yung rational equation into an inverse function. Paano? Paano natin ito i-convert? How to find the inverse function of a rational function? Okay, so we have 4 steps in converting a rational function into an inverse function. Again, our focus here is to find an inverse function. 4 steps. First step is to replace f of x with y. Replace f of x with y. Same as in the principle of life. Kapag x na, Kapag tapos na. Kapag hiwalay na, tanggapin mo na. Huwag mong iyakan. Huwag mong habulin. Anong sabi ni step 1? Replace f of x with y. Best maganda ka. You deserve to be happy. You deserve everything in life. You deserve someone better. So don't drag yourself down because of your ex. Anong sabi ni step 1? Replace. Palitan natin si f of x with y. Second step, switch x and y variable. Si x gawin natin y at si y gawin natin x. Switch x and y variable. Question in math. Sir, bakit ba hindi magkakahiwalay si x and y? Bakit ba laging nagsasama si x and y sa math? Let me teach you this. X, ibig sabihin, tapos na. Hiwalay na. Y, ibig sabihin, reason. Why? Bakit? Bakit natapos yung relasyon? Bakit humantong sa hiwalayan yung relasyon? X and Y. Sabi nga nila, di ba? Everything happens for a reason. That is why, accept it, embrace it, that you become an X because of a reason. May rason, bakit humantong sa hiwalayan ang relasyon ninyo. May rason, bakit kayo nagkahiwalay. That's the second step. Switch X and Y variable. Third step, ito yung pinakamagandang step in finding an inverse function. Diba? X and Y. Y meaning, bakit? Bakit naging X? Sa third step, you have to simplify and solve for Y. Simplify and solve for Y. Ibig sabihin, evaluate mo yung Y, hanapin mo yung sagot, bakit? Diba? Solve for Y. Hanapin mo yung rason, bakit kayo nagkakahiwalay? Evaluate, assess yourself. Is there something wrong with me? Anong wala sa akin na meron sa iba? Is there something wrong with him? Let me teach you this. Sa prinsipyo ng buhay, tanggapin mo kung anong meron ka, kung ano ka. Because in the principle of love, you don't need to change yourself. I mean, you don't need to pretend just to be accepted, just to be loved. Kasi sa principle of love, pag mahal ka ng isang tao, tanggap ka kung ano ka. Tanggap ka kung sino ka. True love accepts who and what you really are. You don't need to pretend, you don't need to change. Assess, solve for why. If there's something wrong with me, improve. If there is something wrong with you, improve yourself. Don't drag yourself down. If there is something wrong with him, accept and respect. What matters most after all in a failure relationship is you become stronger. You become more mature and you become more independent in handling things, in going through along with your journey in life. Again, simplify and solve for why. In third step, assess why. And fourth step, yung pang-apat na step in finding an inverse function, finally, replace y with its inverse. Replace y with f to the power of negative 1. Those are the four steps in finding an inverse function. Ano yung first step natin? Replace f of x with y. Second, switch x and y variable. Third, simplify and solve for y. And fourth, replace y with f to the power of negative 1. So, let's discuss an example on how to find an inverse function. So, let's start. Okay, so we have here an example of a rational function. Again, our objective for this example is we are going to find the domain and range of an inverse function. The first step we need to do is we need to find its inverse function. Ayan, let's have a review. Ano pinakaiba ni rational at saka inverse function? Si rational function are f of x. So it is not yet an inverse kasi inverse function is denoted by f to the power of negative 1. So this example is not yet an inverse function because it is denoted by f of x. So first step natin, we have to convert this equation into an inverse function. We have four steps. Ano yung first step natin? First step is we have to change or replace f of x with y. Replace f of x with y. So palitan natin. Palitan natin si f of x with y. Kasi nga, hindi dapat iyakan si x. Anong gagawin? Palitan lang. And do not change anything from the equation. The first step, we simply replace f of x with y. Then copy 2x plus 4 all over 5. So second step, anong gagawin natin? Switch. Ipagpapalit-palit natin si x at saka si y. Huwag nating iyakan, huwag nating habulin. Simply palitan. Sobrang daming lalaki sa mundo. Sobrang daming babae sa mundo. Hindi lang isa, kaya huwag mong iyakan. Switch, palitan. Okay, si y, gawin natin x, si y. So ito yung magiging x. At saka si x naman magiging y. So simply replace lang. O switch lang natin. Yan. Ano nangyari sa step na to? We simply switch. Look at the previous equation. Si y nagiging x. At saka si x nagiging y. Copy si 2, copy si positive 4 all over 5. Again, let me emphasize for better understanding. Ang ginawa natin sa step 2 is we simply switch y and x variable. The next third step, simplify. Simplify and solve for y. We have to solve for y na hindi si x. Huwag natin isolve si x kasi x tapos na. Tapos na si x, hiwalay na. Tanggapin nyo na. Ha? Tanggapin nyo na. Huwag nyo nang iyak, huwag nyo nang habol, huwag nyo nang isolve si x. Hayaan nyo na si x mabuhay sa kanyang sariling buhay. Kaya let's solve for y. You have to apply cross multiplication. X dito has an imaginary of denominator 1. So simplify cross multiplication. So 2y plus 4 is equal to 5 times x is equal to 5x. Solve for y, we apply the cross multiplication. So 2y plus 4, x times 5 is 5x. For us to solve for y, dapat si y lang matira dito. Lipat natin si positive 4. Transpose. Kapag ilipat natin, hiwalayan natin si 2y. Change it to its opposite sign. Anong sign ni 4 dito? Positive 4. Kapag lipat na, magiging negative. So, sino nawala? Sino kasama ni 2y? Wala. Iniwan si 2y before. So, yan natin si 2y. 5x, sinamahan na. Lumipat si positive 4, nagiging negative 4. Transpose. Diba? Itong transposing na to, somewhat like life lessons, you need to change for better. For the better of everyone. For the betterment sa lahat. So, pag positive, transpose natin, nagiging negative. Okay? So next, anong gagawin? Solve for y. To solve for y, divide both sides by 2. Divide both sides by 2. Ayan. So, cancel natin si 2. Y is equal to 5x minus 4 over 2. Ano yung last step? Last step in finding the inverse function, replace y with, ayun na, the negative 1 of x is equal to 5x minus 4 all over 2. So this is now our inverse function. Okay? Therefore, our rational function is f of x is equal to 2x plus 4 all over 5. And inverse of this equation is f to the power of negative 1 of x is equal to 5x minus 4 all over 2. So this is now our inverse function. Okay, we are done with finding the inverse function. This time, we have to find the domain and range of an inverse function. Kaya nga class, please take note, dapat alam yung previous lesson natin, finding the domain and range. So ma-apply dito in finding the domain and range. Same process. So we have to find the domain. In finding the domain, what makes the denominator 0? Wala. What makes the denominator 0? So wala kasi walang x. So denominator, ibig sabihin yung domain natin, x such that x are the elements of all real numbers. Diba? In finding the domain, we have to focus on the denominator. Walang x sa denominator, so meaning walang makapag-pa-zero sa denominator natin. What makes the denominator 0? What value of x can make the denominator 0? Wala. So, ibig sabihin, all real numbers. Lahat ng real numbers, hindi yung previous na may except. Kasi nga, walang x sa denominator, ibig sabihin, yung domain natin, all real numbers. That is our domain. Okay, let's proceed. So, same process in finding the range. In finding the range of an inverse function, we have to follow the previous example or previous video. Yung dinidiscuss ko bago ang video na to. So, anong gagawin natin? Ito yung original equation. F of negative 1 x is equal to 5x minus 4 all over 2. Ano yung step in finding the range? Hanapin mo na rin yung equation ni range. So, change f of negative 1 of x to y. Palitan natin. So, 5x minus 4 all over 2. That's the first step. Change natin. After that, kasi kapag range is for y, after that, we have to apply cross multiplication. So, cross multiply it as an imaginary one here. So, apply cross multiplication. Y times 2 is equal to 2y. And any number multiplied to 1 is equal to the number itself. So, 5x minus 4 times 1 is equal to 5x minus 4. And then we have to solve for x. Yung previous video natin, labas natin yung x. Ito si x, walang kasama. Dapat walang kasama si x dito. So, lipat natin si negative 4. Ta-transpose natin. Anong sign ni 4 dito? Negative. We have to apply the rule of transposition. So, negative 4, transpose natin, ito yung magiging positive 4. Si 2y may kasama na. Hindi na single si 2y kasi ito si negative 4 lumipat sa kanya. May kabit. So, So lumipat, iniwan si 5x, kaya kasama nito y, negative 4, lipat, nagiging positive 4. Ayan, si 5x parang ikaw, iniwan ka na ni negative 4. So anong ibig sabihin yun? Single ka na, so wala ka nang kasama. Yan, si 5x. Ano nangyari dito? Si 2y, sinamahan ni positive 4 galing kay negative 4 kasi tinatranspose natin. We applied the rule of transposition. From negative 4, nagiging positive 4. Copy 5x. Then solve for x. Solve for x, divide both sides by 5. Divide both sides by 5. Cancel 5. Therefore, 2y plus 4 over 5 is equal to x. Or in other words, pwede rin siya class in this way, x is equal to 2y plus 4 all over 5. So this is now our equation for range. Kasi nga, y na diba? So what value of y in the denominator can make the denominator 0? So wala tayong nakitang y dito. So ibig sabihin, our range is y such that y are the elements of all real numbers. Because walang value ni y in the denominator that can make the denominator 0. So this is now finding the domain and range of an inverse function. Anong ginawa natin? From a rational function, we converted into an inverse function. We applied the 4 steps. And then from this inverse function, we need to focus, we need to find the domain and range based from the inverse function. Because we are going to find the domain and range of an inverse function. So we have to apply the steps in finding the domain. So ayan na, our domain is x such that x are the elements of all real numbers because walang value in x in the denominator that can make it 0. Wala. So, all real numbers. On the other hand naman, in getting the range, this is our equation for range. So, our denominator is 5. So, walang value, walang y dito. Ibig sabihin, walang value ni y that can make the denominator 0. So, ibig sabihin din, our range is all real numbers. Or y such that y are the elements of all real numbers. Okay, so we have here second example for domain and range of an inverse function. Okay, class, let me emphasize, we need to focus on the inverse function because that is our topic for this video, inverse function. Try to look at the example. Is it an inverse function? Yes. No, it is not an inverse function because it is denoted by f of x. An inverse function is denoted by f to the power of negative 1. There is no negative 1 here, so it is not yet an inverse function. So first step natin, anong gagawin? We have to convert this rational equation into an inverse function. So we have to apply the 4 steps in converting this into an inverse function. Ano yung first step natin? Replace f of x with y. Palitan natin si f of x with y. Then, copy. Do not change anything from the equation. Yan. First step natin, replace f of x with y. Then copy 7x all over x minus 3. Then second step, in finding the inverse function, review. Ano yun? Switch x and y variable. Ipagpapalit-palit natin si x and y. Di dapat iniiyakan. Okay? Maganda tayo. We deserve everything in life. Simply replace, simply switch. Y, gawin natin x. Yan. Si x, gawin natin y. Ano yung x dito? Gawin natin y. Yung x dito, gawin natin y. Yan. Anong gagawin? Switch. Y magiging x at si x magiging y. Switch x and y variable. That is our second step. Second step. Then third step, solve for y. Simplify and solve for y. Dapat isolve natin si y. So in this example, apply the cross multiplication again. So x times y minus 3 is equal to 7y. Kasi nga may denominator na 1 dito. 7y times 1 is 7y. So x multiplied by the quantity of y minus 3 kasi we applied the cross multiplication. After that, in solve, di ba? Solve and simplify. Solve for y. Apply the distributive property. X times y is xy. Then x times negative 3x. X times negative 3. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Anong ginawa natin? X times y is xy. Apply the distributive property. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Sa kabila, wala tayong ginalaw. Kapag wala kang ginawa sa isang bagay, hayaan mo na. Huwag mong pakialaman ng buhay ng ibang tao. Okay? Yan dapat. Live your life the way you want it to be. Don't let anyone dictate what you want to live in your life. Okay? So 7y, wala tayong ginawa. Copy 7y. Let me repeat. X times y, xy. X times negative 3, negative 3x. Anong sabi ni step 3? Solve for y. Simplify and solve for y. We have to focus on y. So sabi dito yung mga terms na may y. Si xy at saka si 7y. So ibig sabihin, ipagsama-sama-sama natin. Sa relasyon, I don't believe on LDR. Yes, literal, I don't believe so. Kaya, kapag mahal mo isang tao, humarap ka ng isang bagay para kayong magkasama. Okay? So, is pagsama-sama natin yung mga y kasi we are going to solve for y. Tapos, alisin mo yung mga toxic sa buhay. You can't live your life happily if you are not yet having that sense of move on with your ex. So, alisin natin si ex sa relasyon nila. Hoy ex, umalis ka kasi wala kang y. So, xy, ipagsama-sama natin. Itong 7y, transpose. Anong sign ni 7y dito? Positive. Transpose natin ito magiging 7y. Negative 7y kasi from positive, convert to negative. Convert it into negative because we are going to transpose. At tapos, again, alisin niyo yung mga toxic mo sa buhay. Itong si negative 3x, wala siyang y, huwag niyo siyang gawing third party sa relasyon ni xy at saka ni 7y. Ilipat niyo yan. So, transpose natin magiging 3x. Okay? Ano nangyari dito? Ipagsama-sama natin yung mga terms na may y kasi we are going to solve for y. xy copy kasi wala tayong ginalaw. 7y from positive, convert it, nagiging negative 7y. Itong si negative 3x, transpose it, nagiging positive 3x. And after that, ilabas natin si y. Ilabas natin si y kasi yung common nila. Ilabas natin si y. Sino yung naiwan? Si x na lang at saka si negative 7. Sinong naiwan? Si x at si negative 7 kasi nilabas natin si y. If we're going to check it, y times x is equal to xy. Y times negative 7 is equal to negative 7y. Sa kabila, wala tayong ginalaw. 3x. Let it be. Kasi wala tayong ginalaw sa kabila. So copy. Then solve for y. Divide both sides by x minus 7. Divide both sides by x minus 7. Cancel it out, cancel it out. Therefore, our y is equal to 3x all over x minus 7. Diba? Solve for y. Sabi niya, solve for y. And what will happen? So, therefore, our change y into its, change natin si y into its inverse. Then finally, we have now an inverse. Ayan, 3x all over x minus 7. So this is now our inverse function from the rational function. Ayan. This is now our inverse function. From a rational function, f of x is equal to 7x all over x minus 3. Its inverse function is its inverse function is 3x all over x minus 7. Then, we're not yet done. We are just finding we have just found the inverse function. This time, we are going to find the domain and range of an inverse function. Ano yung first step natin? From the rational equation, kinuha natin yung inverse function. After getting the inverse function, we have to find the domain and range of an inverse function. Ano yung domain? Okay, yung domain niya. Same process. We have to focus on the denominator. What makes the denominator 0? Dapat kasi yung denominator hindi siya magiging equal to 0. So we have to focus on the denominator. Anong denominator yan? X minus 7. Denominator. So equate it to 0. So x is equal to, from negative 7, transpose magiging 7. So So the meaning, ibig sabihin nito, 7 can make the denominator 0. Because we're going to check it, x minus 7 as the denominator, substitute the value of x, which is 7. 7 minus 7 is equal to 0. Therefore, ayun domain natin. Our domain, x, such that x are the elements of all real numbers except 7. Except 7. Hindi kasali si 7, it's because 7 can make the denominator 0. Because 7 minus 7 is 0. In the previous example, wala siyang except kasi nga walang x sa denominator. Ibig sabihin, walang value na x that can make the denominator 0. So, ibig sabihin, sa example na to, may value na x na that can make the denominator 0, which is 7. Therefore, our domain is x such that x are the elements of all real numbers except 7. Because 7 can make the denominator 0. So, this is now our domain. So, this is our domain of an inverse function. Domain of an inverse function. This time, we are going to find the range of an inverse function. Inverse, we need to focus on the inverse function. So, anong first step natin? Range. Palitan natin ng y. Y is equal to 3x all over x minus 7. And yung first step in finding the range, change f of x to y. Then, simplify and solve. Apply cross multiplication. So, y times y times x minus 7 is equal to 3x. You have to apply the cross multiplication. After that, apply the distributive property. X times y is, or y times x is xy. Then y times negative 7 is negative 7y is equal to 3x. Again, y times x is xy. Y times negative 7 is negative 7y. Wala tayong ginalaw kay 3x, then let it be. Copy 3x. After that, you have to solve for x. Lipat natin si x. Pagsama-sama natin yung x. Pagsama-sama yung mga toxic na buhay. Pagsama-sama mo yung x mo at sabay-sabayin mong alisin sa iyong buhay so that you can start a new beginning. You can start a new and happy life. Okay? So, transpose natin si 3x. Anong sign ni 3x dito? Positive. Lipat natin. Transpose, magiging negative. So, xy, transpose, it will become negative 3x. Then, si negative 7y, transpose, it will become positive 7y. Anong ginawa natin? In finding the range, we applied the rule of transposition. xy, wala tayong ginalaw kay xy, copy lang, let it be. After that, si 7y, nilipat natin from negative 7y, it will become positive 7y. This 3x, from positive 3x, transpose natin, it will become negative 3x. Ilabas natin yung mga x, ilabas natin yung mga x kasi wala yung kwenta. Toxic yan sa buhay natin. So, huwag mo nang isama. Again, let me emphasize, you cannot start a new beginning. You cannot start a new life if they are still left unsettled from the past. Kaya settle mo lang yung past, settle with your ex, so that you can start a new one. You cannot start a new beginning if you have not moved on with your ex. So, anong gagawin? Labas natin yung mga x. So, yung naiwan, si y minus 3 na lang. Tapos si 7y. Okay? So, therefore, if you are going to check it, x times y is equal to xy, and x times negative 3 is negative 3x. And then, solve for x. Then, divide both sides by y minus 3. Divide both sides by y minus 3. Cancel it out. Therefore, our x is equal to 7y all over y minus 3. So, this is now our equation for range. Therefore, our range, focus. Let's focus on the denominator. Anong denominator natin? Y minus 3. Y minus 3, denominator, same process in finding the range with the domain. So, equate to 0. So, y is equal to transpose negative 3, it will become positive 3. Therefore, 3 can make the denominator 0. So, what will happen? Our range is y such that y are the elements of all real numbers except 3. Except 3 because 3 can make the denominator 0. 3 minus 3 is 0. So again, in the denominator, dapat hindi siya mag-equal to 0. So except 3, hindi kabilang si 3. Again, let me emphasize, because 3 can make the denominator 0. 3 minus 3 is 0. So ibig sabihin, our range is this. Our range is y such that y are the elements of all real numbers except 3, or y is not equal to 3. And this is how we're going to find the domain and range of an inverse function. Again, let me repeat from the original equation. Anong ginagawa natin? Hinanap natin yung inverse function. Ito, inverse function. So from this rational equation, naging inverse function. 3x all over x minus 7. We apply the 4 steps. From this inverse function, we have to find the domain and range of an inverse function. That's how we are going to find the domain and range of an inverse function. And that ends our lesson for this video about domain and range of an inverse function. I hope you learned something about math, and I hope you learned to embrace and love mathematics. Before I end this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell for you to be notified for some and more math video tutorials to come. Shout out nga pala sa aking mga students, sa grade 11 students, sa BIT International College. How are you? I hope you're doing great and you're doing good in our subject, General Mathematics. And also, shout out nga pala sa aking Team Premier and Team Atat Nation. Shout out sa inyo. Okay? So, that ends our video. Once again, this is Teacher R saying thank you so much. Stay at home, keep safe, go beyond, and may God bless us all.